Hello, I'm going to share my experience on what I was able to do to get a .NET Core 2.0 web application deployed up into the Amazon cloud on a Windows Server 2016 to EC2 instance using CloudFormation, as well as to give a demonstration of the continuous integration per se with CodeDeploy and CodePipeline. So what one of a few prerequisites that you'll need, first of all, you'll need to have AWS account set up for yourself with a key pair, for your IAM user, but that'll be usually the first thing you do when you set up your account. The other thing that you're going to need to do, since this is a Windows process, you'll want to go ahead and download the AWS tools for PowerShell. So you can go to this link, and I'm going to go ahead and provide all of the links for you underneath the video and where you can get these things. So after you install this AWS tools for PowerShell, you'll basically have AWS commands at your fingertip, and there's a whole slew of documentation out there on the various commands. For this demo, all you really need to do is run 2 of those PowerShell commands and then a PowerShell script. The first one, unfortunately, I cannot show you how it works on my box because you end up passing in your client credentials, but I can tell you you're going to want to run this particular command called set AWS credential, and you're going to have to give it your client access key, things like this. So, and again, I didn't want to show you mine, but you can look this up and then use your access key, and you'll go ahead and run that in the PowerShell thing right here in your directory. And then the second thing you're going to want to do is run the set default AWS region command. And since I'm doing this demonstration from, basically, since the North Virginia region, I'm going to go ahead and set this to US East-1. Having said that, once that's all run, we should be good to go with this demo. What I'm going to do is, quickly explain the directory structure, things of that nature, and what these scripts do. And then afterwards, I can go into the scripts in a little more detail, either in this video or another video. So I am using the free version of Zoom. It's my own personal Zoom account, so I don't know if there's a time limit, so I may have to split it out into 2 videos, but we'll see how that goes. So where did I come up with this originally? I went to, and I'll include this link as well, I went to this GitHub page, and as you can see, it's 2 years old, and it kind of explains this gentleman's setup, and it was very, very useful and very, very helpful. And he has a .NET Core 1.0 project back in the old days there, two years ago. And he basically created a CloudFormation template and, and some PowerShell scripts, which I piggybacked and downloaded and made modifications in order to get it to work with .NET 2.0. Also, with his script, it's very useful. He's provisioning 3 environments, I believe. He's provisioning a development, a QA, and a production environment, all in the context of one script. And I think that's really awesome. What I ended up doing, though, for this script is I changed the script so that it's only provisioning 1 environment at a time. So the ultimate, or the end choice, I guess, on this is you could potentially, if you choose to use the script that I wrote with the modifications, you could potentially parameterize those so that you could run it 3 different times, one to provision a QA instance, another to provision a staging, another to provision a production instance. But anyways, I highly recommend kind of poking through here. And as you can see, he's got the CloudFormation setup template. So CloudFormation it's basically a data definition. No, it's more than a data definition. It's I don't know how to describe it other than it's almost like creating a schema for what your instances are going to look like. What type of instance, what operating system, what commands to launch. at the time that the instance is being created, and so on and so on. And you can read all about it. But the CloudFormation, these are templates that allow you to automate the process. And we'll kick that off with PowerShell. So the idea is you can fire off a PowerShell command and it's going to go ahead and apply the CloudFormation templates. And then after a while, your instance should be created, and hopefully in our case, we should have our NETCore 2.0 application finished. So what does this NETCore application look like? It's a real simple one. As a matter of fact, all I did was a file new, and then I made a file new ASP NETCore 2.0 application, and then I just changed a piece of code in there, and here it is running. So it's about as basic as it gets, but imagine if you were writing your own application. But as you can see, this one says version 1 of the app, no changes have ever been made. So where to go from there? So what I have, and I put it up there in GitHub, and I can provide a link. I have this kind of, this would be your root, if you will. And if we take a look at my directory structure here, as you can see, it kind of mirrors what you're seeing here, with the exception of my key pair, things of that nature. This would be a decent way to start out. I mean, the way I did this is, I'm not saying that this is correct. It just seems to have worked for me. But, you know, so the intent is if anybody else is wanting to try this out or get familiar with it, you know, they could start out with this directory structure, get it to work, and then they can modify it and change it to however they want. So let me go ahead and compile. Well, this application has actually been compiled. I'll just recompile it again. And here's the idea. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. And in the publish here, I have set my target location. By the way, I'm using Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition, but I have set my target location to point to this published app publish folder, which in this directory structure, it's going to go right here. So let me, and I've already published before, as you can see, so I'm going to republish this again. So it's starting. So if you take a look at the in the GitHub, you'll see this published app folder, and there'll be a README. And all this README is just basically saying is make sure that you have these files in here. Like it says, make sure that you have this folder called publish. Make sure you have these 4 PowerShell scripts in here. And I'll go ahead and change this so that it includes AppSpec YAML file too. So you'll need to have the AppSpec YAML, so I'll update this. But the AppSpec YAML is what the CodeDeploy agent needs for the most part in CloudFormation and CodeDeploy when the instance is being created. And it basically gets installed and run on the other system. And it includes all of these targets here, these hooks. So these are the PowerShell applications that it'll run once the instance has been provisioned on the box itself. So anyways, as you can see, I'm putting some notes here. So I was working on this YouTube video right here. So this is a work in progress. I actually had this finished a few weeks ago, but now I'm just starting to clean it up so I can make it more presentable. So now that the code has been published, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight every one of these files except for this README, and I am going to send it to a file called example app, and it's a zip file. And normally the way I was doing this to get the script to work is I was put in a certain directory, and I'll go ahead and do that as well. So there's a to install directory. As you can see, I already got an old version of example app in there. I'm just going to overlay it. This to install is used by the main PowerShell script to, originally it's going to upload these. When you run it for the first time, it's going to upload these to an S3 bucket. And that way, when the instance is being created in the cloud, the instance itself can pull these from the S3 bucket. So since we're deploying a NETCore app into the cloud, we're going to need to make sure that we have the NETCore 2.0 runtime and the NETCore Windows hosting so that you can tie IIS and your .NETCore web app together, you have to make sure that those are actually installed on that remote instance. And the CloudFormation template that I have will go ahead and do that for you, and it'll also create the default website, it'll install the IIS management tools, it'll create your application pool, and wire everything together, as well as install this example app. So this example app needs to have all of these folders in here. Pardon me while I turn off my phone that was ringing. So it needs to have all these folders in there. So having said that, I think that we can proceed to the next step. And the next step is I have an S3 bucket, which has a bucket inside of there called demo install bucket. And it's got these two files in there. So what I did for the sake of this demo is I manually uploaded these two executables into my bucket, and I'm going to manually upload this example app here. So let me go ahead and do that. And I'm going to drag and drop this example app in there to add the files. Oops, just say upload, accept all the defaults. So now we've got these three files in this demo install bucket. And you'll need to create a bucket, like I said, of your own, and it'll need to be unique since S3 buckets are global. They need to be unique across the board. So after setting my region, the very next step now is we can actually get into running the main script. So if you go into your root, assuming that you got everything from GitHub and you created these things, the main file to focus on is this environment setup PowerShell script, and that's what you're looking at here. I'm using the code editor to do this. And what happens when you run the script, and we will run it, it's going to go ahead and it's going to set up your pipeline buckets, and then it's going to launch the CloudFormation stack, which I have yet to show you. And then you wait probably up to 20 to 30 minutes for it to create everything, install the software, and then hopefully we should be good to go. For this example, I have commented out the actual pieces of code here that are writing the files that are from this to install directory to the S3 bucket. So I manually did it myself. So this setup pipeline bucket is basically not going to do anything for this example, but in yours, you can uncomment this out. The reason I had to comment this out is my free Zoom that I'm using to record this. It's my own personal Zoom account. These two steps take a while to run, and they take up some network activity. So for whatever reason, my Zoom session seems to crash on me, and so I just manually uploaded it. You could also manually upload it yourself if you want. So this is hard coded, so you may want to parameterize this. So there are some opportunities for you to do that. The next thing is, like I said, it's going to launch the CloudFormation stack. So let's take a look at running it. And I just wanted you to see, I jumped over to my CloudFormation console. I have no stacks right now. And I've got these three artifacts that we're going to install in my S3 bucket, and I have no instances. So I'm going to go ahead and fire off this script, and we'll see what happens here. So I'm going to say environment setup PS1. So it's going to ask you for your EC2 key pair, and that's the one that you're going to have for your account that you're logged in. When you create an EC2 instance, you have to generate that. I just went ahead and just copied it into this directory, and I'm going to delete it when I'm done with the example. So I'll just say my EC2 key pair and type that in. So it's skipping these artifacts simply because I had it commented out, and right now, so it's using CloudFormation template. So what's going to happen is it's basically spinning right here now. So it's running the CloudFormation template. So let's kind of take a look at that, and this will take a little bit of time to run. As a matter of fact, my experience is it takes up to 25 minutes in some cases. So what is this CloudFormation template? Well, it's in YAML. And what I did, again, was I went to the original blog, you know, the one that had the NETCore 1.0 application. And inside of there, this gentleman had an awesome looking template. You know, so this was in JSON. And just to make this example and demo a little bit different, I decided to convert this over to YAML. And I've also heard from some others that YAML seems to be a direction that you know, these templates are moving forward to. It's not ground in stone. JSON is just as good. JSON's fine, but with YAML, it seems to be a little bit less code, and you can also add comments inside of there. So what I did was I highlighted this whole YAML file. I'm sorry, this whole JSON file, selected it, and copied it, and then there's an online tool. I'm sure there's other ones out there. It's called JSON to YAML, and what you can do is you can just paste in the JSON right there, and on the right hand side you get the YAML. So that's what I ended up doing, and that's what you see in this file. So again, this is up in GitHub, and then I went ahead and modified quite a bit of it to make sure that we only provision just one instance. And there's opportunities for you to also parameterize it, if you will, in the future, you know, just to get this example to suit your needs and all. So right now this is kind of spinning, and it's creating the CloudFormation stack. As you can see, all of a sudden, when I go back to my CloudFormation tab, we have this demo test NETCore app that's being created, and you can monitor, you know, its activity and its events and things of that nature. So let me take a look at the events. And like I said, this takes an awful lot of time, but it's, well, awful lot, 20 minutes or whatever, relatively speaking. But what it's doing is it's going through this CloudFormation template and it's applying everything. So it's actually creating your image. And I have actually hard-coded the instance type to be a T2 small. Probably should be a micro or whatever, it to be cheaper and all that. But you know, I passed in my key pair. So feel free. I mean, this script here can be modified even more to meet your needs. If you do choose to go with the bucket approach there, you're going to want to change in the setup pipeline bucket. You're going to want to change this bucket name variable to be that of yours, as well as inside of here, I made some notes. On line 42, I'm sorry, on line 78 and 122 in the CloudFormation template. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I appreciate it. Just thought I'd show that to you right now. So we're in the CloudFormation template. You probably want to go down to line 78, and you're going to want to change this here to be your bucket instead of demo install bucket, because that's mine. And also on line 122, you're going to want to do the same thing. Otherwise, it won't work. So you're going to want to read this bucket here too. So while this is running, it's still running, as you can see. I wanted to show you that all of a sudden, well, it hasn't created the EC2 instance yet. Well, there we go. So the CloudFormation, you know, it's running right now. So it's creating all of your IAM roles, policies for this. It's going to create your security groups for you. And we can take a look at that when it's done. But it also is provisioning the instance. So here's that Windows instance that it's provisioning for me. So if you take a look at the setup one, you can see this is a T2 small. And if you take a look at the EC2 management console, that's what we got going on right here. So it's still running. And while it's running, I think I just kind of wanted to go over this a little bit. The main part about this template, and you can read more on the documentation, as there's a lot of good documentation on CloudFormation templates. You can go out to YouTube or your favorite video subscription site. The main area here that I made changes to was in this commands section. So it's going to run up to 15 different commands in sequence. So it's programmatically. So we're running PowerShell commands to install. So imagine this is actually running on the remote instance or CloudFormation when it creates the box and the software and all that. We're telling it to download the .NET SDK, and again, we get it from that bucket, demo install bucket that I uploaded. So here's the .NET runtime. It's not the SDK, I apologize. Well, actually, yes it is. So it's installing the runtime. It's and then I have it set up so that it's going to install IIS. It's going to create the default website for you. We're creating a test app pool. You can change all these however you want. And then it's just basically linking the app pool to the .NET Core application using some of these IIS commands. And then it's going to go and download the ASP.NET hosting software that I put up in the bucket. So you're going to need that, again, in order to get it to work. And then it's going to install it. And when all that stuff is successfully run, it's also going to install the CodeDeploy agent. And I'll show you why that's necessary. And when all that's run, it's going to send a, hey, I'm done. And then at that time, this script will end. So what I'm going to do is pause the video because this will still take some time to run, and then I will resume after that. Okay, it appears that the PowerShell script has finished running. And as I can say, it'll come to this spot right here. And as I could say, it will take some time, so do not be alarmed. You know, it could take up to 15 or 20 minutes. So what we have here is, let's go ahead and take a look at our EC2 instance. Let's take a look at our stack, our CloudFormation stack as well. So if I go to stack detail, you can see that it says create complete, and you can look at, again, you can look at all of the events and things of that nature. And by the way, when you're done with your demo, I did want to mention what you're going to want to do, or what I'm going to do also, is make sure that you select your stack and delete your stack. Otherwise, you know, otherwise it's going to go ahead and you know, you're going to end up paying for these instances that are running. So I wanted to mention that to you. And the cool thing about deleting your stack is when you delete your CloudFormation stack, it's going to go ahead and delete every single thing that you've provisioned. So when you delete your stack, it's also going to go out there and delete your EC2 instance and like any of the things that your instance has provided. So it's pretty cool. So it'll go ahead and roll that all back. So let's take a look at our instance. It says that it's completed. If I go down here and copy the public, shall we say, DNS right here, and overlay it here, as you can see, we have our application deployed. So it says version 1 of the app, no changes here have ever been made. So it looks like we went through that process successfully. The next thing I want to do is show you the whole CodeDeploy, CodePipeline thing. So if we go to CodePipeline, I also want to show you what this created. This template created this pipeline, and I called it Theron's.NET Core or Test Core app, and you can go and modify, you know, that's inside of the YAML script. You can go ahead and modify that. There is a little bit of work for you to, you may want to parameterize this, so, but that'd be a good way to learn it. And so what we have here, the long and short of it, this CodePipeline, I think is pretty cool. The idea is it's looking for changes in your S3 bucket that, you know, that in my case happens to be this demo install bucket, particularly this example app.zip. And the idea is anytime I drop a new version or anything like that of this file in there, it's going to trigger this action, and it's going to pull that zip out, and then it's going to fire it on over to the AWS CodeDeploy, and it'll fire your new update. It'll install that on the instance that you've provisioned. So let's go ahead and I'll run through that process, or I'll just show you a demo. So I'm going to go back into my web application, and let's just imagine we've made some major changes, or, you know, but in this case, I'm just going to say version 2 of the app, you know, major changes made. Let's see here. Major changes made. Even though we haven't, you know, I could say this is about, and then version 2, and don't necessarily have to build, but I'm going to go ahead and republish this. I'm going to republish this back over to that folder again that we had like in the beginning. And let's wait for the publish to complete, and we'll go through this process again. So it's going. And it's done. So it ended up putting it into this folder here, environment setup, published at, publish, yeah, all that stuff there. So what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is go through the whole process again. I'm going to highlight these files, and I'm going to go ahead and send it to zip. I'm going to call it example app. I'm going to do a step that you don't necessarily have to do. You could literally just upload it to the S3 bucket right now if you want, but I'm a creature of habit here, so I'm going to go ahead and do this process, put it in there, and then I'm going to go to the S3 here. I could delete it or I could overlay it. It doesn't really matter. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and just move it in there. Upload another version of this example app. So when we upload it, this CodePipeline is configured to run periodically, and it'll check for changes if you want. So you could potentially have a continuous integration thing, or like after a Jenkins job runs, you could actually upload the artifact to your S3 bucket, and then it'll go ahead and do a deploy of that. As you can see, I didn't make any changes. All I did was re-upload a new version of that, and then this thing just kicked in. You could see this Amazon S3. So CodePipeline just detected that there's been a change in the file. So it's saying, hey, I just noticed that. So it's going to take that example app, and it's going to feed it into this AWS CodeDeploy, which will go ahead and send it on up to your instance. So let's wait for that to happen. So that step just succeeded, and then it's passing it down. And then shortly you'll see this down